Meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee. Order. It is 2:31. Aaron, could you do the roll call, please?
Of course. Jamie Acton. Luke Boland.
Here.
Cindy Heil.
Here.
Brad Coy.
Here.
Todd Van Hove.
Here.
Brian Lindemood.
Present.
Shayna Kilcoyne.
Present.
Matt Stitchick.
Here.
Kent Colhays.
Here.
And Craig Lyon and Steve Rebuffalo are excused. Oh, Jamie just stepped in. Hi, Jamie.
Okay, perfect. Would you also please give the public involvement announcement?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are presented by staff or consultant. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn off your camera when you're not speaking on an item. And if you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have a motion for approving today's agenda?
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lindemood, second by Mrs. Heil. Do we have any changes? Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Okay, agenda is approved. We also have 2 sets of minutes before us. Do we approve them separately or together, or does it matter?
It's up to how you guys want to do them. It's faster to approve them together, but some people may want to go through them individually.
Sounds good. We'll proceed together unless somebody raises an objection. Anyone that's objecting to do them together? Okay, so do we have a motion for approving the March 10th, 2022 and April 14th, 2022 minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Van Hove, seconded by Mr. Lindemood. Do we have any changes? Any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, the March 10th and April 14th, 2022 minutes are approved. Moving to agenda item 5A. Look at our action items. First one is the 2023 through 2026 TIP comment response summary. I'm assuming Aaron will take that one on or direct us to someone else.
I will be taking this one on. Yes, thank you, sir. Okay, everyone. So before you today is the comment response summary from our public comment period we just had on the 23 through 26 TIP. So just, you know, we did our criteria development, analysis, and release for the public. We did the call for nominations. We used that criteria to select projects through an internal scoring team and develop a draft 23 through 26 TIP that was released for public comment period, for a 30-day public comment period, as well as put through the assembly process, and the assembly hearing was on May 10th. I will note that Meg Zolotel was absent from the May 10th assembly meeting. I was not alerted to that fact until the night I got to the assembly meeting itself. Just wanted to point that out. And so the assembly members were concerned, and Chris Constant, the assembly member, and Forrest Dunbar, the only 2 who spoke on this item, wanted to delay this until later after Meg Zolotel returned. She is out until May 31st, so it'd be at their June 7th meeting. As most of you know, we are on a very tight schedule to get this document approved before the end of the fiscal year, September 30th of 2022. So delaying the public or the assembly's public hearing until June was not within our schedule to get this approved on time, so we were unable to push back. I did alert the policy committee members that if they wanted, or the assembly members, that if they wanted their comments to be seen before the policy committee meeting, we needed to have all their comments by today. And they did not submit any comments. They just approved unanimously with no comments submitted to us. So give you a background on that. What's brought before you today is the comment response summary itself. So we got 182 comments from the public as well as staff or other agencies. Staff responded to all the comments and provided the recommended changes on the far right column. So today, what we need you to do is look over the comment response summary, make recommendation on the comment response summary as a whole or on individual comments itself on how you guys want to go, if you want to approve them or if you want to disapprove them, or if you have other changes you'd like to see made. Whatever you guys approve today, we're going to take and develop the interagency draft that needs to go to the policy committee for draft approval next week. What happens after that is we take that interagency draft, we run it through the interagency consultation in June for air quality conformity determination development. We'll release that in July for a 30-day public comment period. Then we'll bring everything back in August for final approval, and then send it to DOT, FHWA, FTA for all the final approvals that they need to do, and hope we get everything approved before the end of the fiscal year and work very hard for that. I do want to note, because there's been some comments about let's make a whole bunch of changes, in August. The problem with that is how process works. And Cindy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to try to do my best to explain this. When you go to the interagency consultation group to have them review it to see what kind of impacts it could have on air quality or the SIP measures, the TCMs, they have to be able to see what projects are in the document to make that determination. If you give them one list, they make their determination, and then you come back a month later and you've changed that list completely or even significantly, you have to go back through the interagency consultation process as well as releasing the air quality document for the public to be able to see. So that's why there's kind of step-by-step approach that we have to this process, where we do the public comments first and get any of the changes made that the policy committee wants to see. Then we take all of that and go to the interagency group. If there are small changes like programmatic changes, like shifting funding from one year to the next, those tend to be okay. But wholesale project deletion or additions need to be done now at this meeting and at the policies committee meeting next month. Just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page there with that regard.
Next month or next?
Next week, sorry. Thank you. Oh, I'm thinking already of the interagency consultation group next month. So next week. So as soon as we're done here today at the TAC meeting, whatever you guys approve, we have to post for the policy committee meeting next week.
Sounds good. What's your recommendation for how to go through this?
I will explain how it's been done in the past, and it's up to you guys. In the past, they've done two variations. One, they've selected comments that they want to respond to individually. Members will go through and just say, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. Or they've gone through each comment individually, page by page. So it's kind of up to you guys as the committee members on how you would like to do that.
Suggestions?
Question first.
Okay.
The question I have for you, Aaron, is you said that understanding the process, once it gets through, and then it comes back, and changes are made to it. So I just want to clarify, any changes made to it has to go back again for interagency consultation and air quality determination.
No, if they're programmatic changes, like you're saying, okay, this project was funded in 2023, we want to fund it in 24 now and then move another project up instead, but they're still the same projects that were originally in there. Those are okay because it's still showing the same projects. What would have to go back through is if you're like, we don't like this particular project, let's take it out, and then to bring this brand new project that wasn't part of the original draft into the plan and replace it.
So anything that would trigger our air quality at that level would trigger a redo. Put it simply.
And so your comment, Brad, in the past, what we've done, we just kind of, at the first page, any questions. Second page.
Yeah, that's what we did last time. The other question I have is, I think some of us got an email about an hour ago. And I'm curious, how does that play into the process?
So I did not receive the email an hour ago. I received the email maybe about 10 minutes ago from one of the committee members who alerted me to the fact that Nancy Pease had submitted some comments to the TAC members about some concerns. And then I also got an email about, sorry, just a second, let me look. A little less than an hour ago from Cheryl Richardson, so 2:08 p.m. To forward comments to you TAC members. So it's up to you guys how you would like to handle those comments. My concern is, have the TAC members had a chance to review those comments?
That's,
Historically, that's why we recommend not submitting things so tight to the meeting deadline. So it gives the committee members a chance to review them.
yeah, I didn't have a chance to look over it, so
So it's up to you how you would like to handle it.
any suggestions from committee? Anyone have a chance to look over it?
I mean, they're technically outside of the public comment window, correct?
Correct,
They wouldn't be incorporated into this document
correct.
because they're outside that window.
Yeah, I wonder with, given that none of us have seen it, we don't have time to see it right now, given it is in time that it could go before the policy committee, I feel like, because things get submitted.
I mean, we could send them to the policy committee. The thing is they weren't submitted through a public process. They were just sent to us at the last minute.
So would it technically be considered just public comment on the item?
Yeah, we could incorporate it as public comment that we heard at this meeting here on the item, and we could include that with whatever we send forward to the policy committee members for them to consider.
Appropriate.
Yeah, because then it's entered into the public record at that point, and not discounted. We're not trying to discount their comments. It's just how do we integrate it in so other members of the public can see it as well.
Shana has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Shannon.
I did glance at, this is Shana Kilpine for the record, I did glance at this, email quickly, and it's, not something I just want to say, well, it's not, it wasn't submitted in time, like, it is concerning, and I think should be addressed, and part of it is this issue of our timeline, and I'm wondering if there is anything that can be done in the future to offer more time, because this has happened before where, we just are on this timeline, and therefore, even if there is interest in other changes or comments, we struggle to incorporate them in a timely manner. And I think that's a shame. But at the same time, like, this is the process. So I'm struggling with this a little bit, and just attaching it doesn't feel great to me. But I'm not sure what to suggest otherwise.
So in regards to the timeline, yes, that is something I'm struggling to work on as quickly as I can, but I've only been at the job for a month, so I need more than a month to be able to make some adjustments to things. But for future document updates, we are very aware of the timeline concerns. And we want to try and adjust that as we can. I just want to stress, we still have our deadlines we have to meet. Those don't change. And we're going to do what we can to help with future plans to allow more time where possible. But I will explain, there are a number of things that are out of our control for some things. The MTP, for example, we have to go through the municipal purchasing process to get an RFP out on the street. And the last time we did that, it took us over a year to get it done, which eats into our approval time. This go around, we updated the criteria. That took us over a year, and it ate up into our starting the development of this. So it's not just these documents that we have to worry about. It's anything before them that we need to make sure are done in a timely manner as well. And I'm working with Christine to try and develop timelines for all of our documents so we can see when do we need to start, when do we need to have it done, and what can we do to adjust our comment periods and provide more or additional. For example, the assembly meeting, I heard concerns from these two assembly members that they didn't have enough time to review this. Okay, next go around, we're going to try and see if we can add some kind of work session with the assembly in before their public hearing. So we can sit down and walk through the document, kind of what we're doing today, and talk with them. That's something I want to build into the schedule because I think it's important to do. But we'll have to wait. That is something to work on.
You should do something different this time. You have disconnected the air quality conformity with the public comment period initially to allow people to look at it and make changes. You could at this point in time, as a policy committee, make changes of adding or subtracting major projects, and you won't have to do a redo. So they did make changes this time around, trying to decouple some of the rigidity, and so there was a little bit more flexibility. So it is possible, this meeting and the policy committee and changes. So that wouldn't trigger conformity. It's just that then you do the conformity and then you're locked in. So it's either you get locked in early or at this time around it's being locked in later. So there has been some changes. I thought, you know, this is good. At least it's an attempt.
Yeah.
It should be recognized.
It provides the opportunity. Now the question, maybe with a short timeline, but at least it's an opportunity.
Well, as well, I will say that, you know, we incorporated the comments that didn't make the last one as well, to try to expedite and hear everybody, listen to the comments and address the comments. There's been more than one attempt made to try and listen to and address comments.
Okay, well, let's dive in and see what we can do then. I'm thinking if we go
Sorry, I'm sure.
page by page and anyone can bring up a comment on first page that stood out in questions.
Sorry, I had trouble hearing. This is Shana Kilcoyne. I had trouble hearing a little bit of that.
So we're gonna dive in and start looking at the comments and not go through them individually one by one. I don't think we have time in this meeting. But look at it page by page and committee members can bring up questions that we have on each page. So we're gonna jump and look at page 1 at the draft tip comment response summary. And any comments or questions that committee members have are welcome at this time.
Thanks, Brad.
That's right.
Do we want to try to generally go over some of the comments that came in through the email at the same time?
Through the most recent email?
Yeah.
Which email would you like? Cheryl
The one
Richardson?
that I saw was Nancy Pease.
Okay, I can open the Nancy Pease one and talk about some of them if you would like.
She does have comments that I page 18. Should we just, are they similar to what her email was? Those that had a chance to look at it?
No, they get into things like deterrence of public comment, deflection of public comments, dismissal of public comments.
Well, I'm not worried, I'm not talking, those are the opinions. I'm talking about the ones, the revisions to the draft tip 2023 and 2026, the last three
Okay.
pages of the attachment, 2 pages of the attachment.
Yes, I can go ahead. There are
There's
12
Right.
changes, and I think some of them are integrated into this comment response summary.
And some of them are general comments where, you know, funding the greenhouse gas emission reduction plan, that would be something that, I mean, you could add a project potentially to do that, but it can't be done in time for this, of course. Or, you know, there's generally, general items that could be incorporated in the next round of planning, but could be incorporated in this round because of the breadth and the depth.
Yeah, I mean, for the greenhouse gas emission, we are already recommending a greenhouse gas emission target for the 2050 MTP, and that's part of our comment response summary that you'll see next month. You know, as I said, it takes time for us to respond to things. We don't have an immediate turnaround like some people seem to expect.
Is it even eligible for funding?
A greenhouse gas emission plan?
Emissions reduction action plan.
Yeah, I think we would be able to find the funding for it. I'm not too worried about that. It's just, you know, when you talk about plans, you tend to use STBG allocation or other funding, and they require a match. The Muni almost can never come up with a match because they do bond funding, which can't be used on the match. And then DOT has a hard time coming up with the match, and AMATs can't come up with match because we have no non-federal funds. So that's always just something to kind of think about for plans.
Right, and I think it's important to reiterate that for the record.
So as we go through this, if some of the email comments are applicable, we can talk about them. Otherwise, we could fold that in after we get through these comments that were submitted and documented. So looking back on the page 1, Any questions or comments? So it looks like this page, for me, it has some AMAT staff comments. I noticed that one of the changes of the Fifth Avenue signal lighting upgrade. And I was curious what triggered that change. It looks like there was a cost estimate adjustment, or could you speak to that?
Yeah, so we actually, it's two folds here. We received comments from the public that we shouldn't be adjusting the signals until we do some more work downtown. And because there's been comments about changing like Fifth Avenue from a one-way to a two-way, slower speed, stuff like that. So there was public comment that we shouldn't be messing with the signals until we decide what to do and do it all at once. So that was one thing. A second thing is when we looked at this more based on the nomination form, the nomination form did not have a lot of detailed information about these projects. And when we went into finding out some more information, we realized the cost was going to be a lot higher than originally anticipated. And that was originally part of our kind of scoring discussion. So based on that, staff is recommending removing the Fifth Avenue ones. The Third Avenue we're recommending keeping in because there was a separate nomination form that did explain a lot of the requirements that would need to be done for that project. So we kind of scored it based on that, and we knew what was happening. And it's a way to help keep the process transparent. So it's easier to match what was nominated versus what's in the tip versus what was nominated, how did this get into the tip? So staff is recommending replacing those Fifth Avenue signal upgrades with 3 separate projects. 2 of them are road upgrades / complete streets type projects. So they would do non-motorized improvements, lighting, drainage where needed, ADA improvements for Lois and 32nd Avenue, and then Folker Street. And Folker Street's right on Tudor. And then we have a non-motorized improvement, Dale Street. This is looking at pedestrian facilities on Dale Street. Based on the nomination that was submitted, they were asking for pedestrian improvements. I will say when I sat down and talked to the municipal PM&E group, they recommended that if possible, we actually make this a road upgrade versus just pedestrian improvements. I didn't feel comfortable making that because there was no basis other than just talking internally, because the nomination form didn't have that on there. It was just for the sidewalk or the pedestrian improvements in the area. I figured I'd just let you know that they were saying if you wanted to make it a road upgrade in addition to the pedestrian improvement. And I do have the cost estimates for what that would be.
And is that the only change between when we saw this tip list before and the updated tip recommendations now?
In terms of project additions, yes, I believe those were the only changes, those 3 additions or deletions. All the other changes were fixing any of the errors we had for road numbers or tip need ID numbers, because some of them were in error. We added a new column to the tip at the request of FHWA to show the responsible agency for the project. And then we had some other things like showing that the project estimates are in year of expenditure dollars and some other small things that are scattered throughout the document I can go through if you need. But the 3 project changes I mentioned were the only project changes.
And were these new 3 projects added? Were they in the tip scoring criteria and up towards the top of that?
Yes, they were. They were. Folker's the only one that was a little lower than the other 2, but Lois and Dale were up in the higher end of the score. So basically what we did is when we said, okay, if we're going to move these Fifth Avenue signals, we need to go back through the scores again that we had posted for everyone to see and look for some of the projects that we had originally wanted to put in, but didn't have enough funding for. And now that we had a little more funding available, was there a way for us to add in some of these projects that the members of the public had been asking for, complete streets and non-motorized focused projects? And we were able to select, staff recommends these 3 based on the scores.
Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. So at this point, we could, and looking at that, the Dell Street, doing kind of from non-motorized to complete street. on the south side of that, by the parking lot, it's just kind of a free-for-all driveway area. Would a pedestrian improvement like narrow those driveways, or would a more full street improvement like address that? Do you have any thoughts or ideas or?
I'm not a designer, but based on what I've seen for other non-motorized improvements, the non-motorized improvements alone could change the configuration of that driveway, because if you put a sidewalk on, or, sidewalk or some kind of pathway on either side, you could narrow it down to make it an actual single driveway and an out or two driveways, something like that. A lot of that would have to be determined at the design level when the project, if it gets going. I think the roadway improvement was just something that was noted by the Muni as being needed at some point. And so they're like, well, if you're out there, you might as well do it all. I'm like, well, that's not really how we approach things. We need to make sure that's the original intent of the project, and what was nominated and all that kind of stuff.
I have to disagree a little bit with
Yeah.
that, because someone comes in and nominates stuff, and the experts are the people within the municipality, and they look at that and they make their best judgment and recommendation on what would be the best. So you utilize your funds. If you're gonna go in there and the road has to be fixed, the best thing to do is to do it all at once, because you're not gonna do a road, I mean, you wanna do an improvement and then come back later when the main facility failed and have to rip it all up and re-put it in again, because you haven't done that. So I mean, that's what, coming back and having all those people score the project and look at the project, because most of the nominators they don't know all the details. And that is the responsibility of these various groups to look at it holistically and ensure that you're looking in these things and timing and making sure that we don't have projects that we have to come back later and redo. So I don't know if we want to be too narrow.
Well, I just want to clarify something. When we scored the project, we didn't know that it needed a complete road reconstruction or whatever we wanted to call it. It wasn't until like a week ago, right before we posted it, that I found out it needed to be more, that it could be more than just pedestrian improvements.
Change the scoring in the list.
And no, I don't know. We didn't go back and rescore it because there hasn't been enough time to get the committees together to rescore it based on that. So that's why I didn't feel comfortable making that change without having done all of that. So that's why I brought it up today, because then it can actually be out there as part of the public process, that if the committee wants to upgrade this to a full road work project, everyone knows about it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And it is a good point that you make, that if we do pedestrian improvements and the road comes in later, and how much more money would get spent versus doing it together, which we don't know at this point. And so that would also be a challenge, like, would adding the road affect final number of the TIP and not make it financially restrained anymore?
That's another challenge, is if you change the project cost, we would have to find where that funding comes from. As it's a design stage at this point, it tends to be a little cheaper than the actual construction. And the project cost goes from 2 to 6 million total, based on the MOA's estimate. So the design number wouldn't go up that much. So we could find the funding for it if there was need for it, and I could do it right on the fly here to let you guys know what that would look like.
So if we are putting this as a non-motorized, like it's being recommended here, focused, and through the design, it's determined that it would cost X amount to add the road into it. Would that be, because it's a project, if it's in the TIP, let's say, could that additional funding be allocated to it if it was available, or like move to future TIPs? Is the fact that it's in the TIP can allow some of that flexibility?
I guess I need DOT to respond to how does that work if you start a project as a non-motorized and then you want to move it into a roadway project? What impacts from the federal side? Our side would be, we'd have to do an amendment with air quality and all that kind of stuff. But is there anything on the FHWA side that would prevent us from basically upgrading it to a full road project?
It would be the same. It would have to be an amendment, changing the entire scope. Scope amendment. Well, no, because you're doing
We
the
just do the
TIP
TIP
and
amendment,
incorporating that project into this TIP. Yes, Mr. Baskey, you want to provide some light on that?
Sure. So it depends on where the project is Sean Baskey, head of highway design for, Central Region DOT. So it depends on where you're at in the project development. So the goal would probably be to define, similar to how we handled Northern Lights pathway, upgrades, right? Define what the overall scope of the project is relatively early before we advance too much. If you got through the environmental document, you have to, and, then decided that you needed to go back and redo the roadway work, then you'd have to redo the entire environmental document, start over, and, scrap a lot of the efforts that you've done already. And so the goal would be to define scope really early on. We'd have to put in an amendment for a new project development agreement with FHWA if we change the scope after we had it approved.
It seems like it'd be better to put in maybe a little bit bigger scope, and then it's easier to go down than it is to go up.
It certainly is. The one thing to caution is that if you put in too much scope, then you're expending efforts and energy and, dollars in a direction that you may not actually construct. We've certainly done that before.
I would recommend the project goes in as a full road.
I was just gonna say, I mean, just based on this conversation, if you think you need to upgrade the road, my recommendation would be put it in as a whole project road in.
If P&E has how people, the experts say that it needs to be done at some point.
Can I throw in a potentially related issue? Comment number 26 regards Martin Luther King Drive extension. And I see in the staff response, there is possibility of DOT and PF recommending closing out of that project. Would that not pair well with shifting those dollars and efforts to the Dale design?
So the Martin Luther King Jr. Extension is already zeroed out in the TIP, so there's no funding already programmed, so we would have to find it. But, I'm sitting here looking at it, the Dale Street design work, we could easily add in some more to get started and then bring in some more later as needed. It's starting initial design is anticipated starting in 2025. So there's more than enough time, then the second hit will happen sometime in 27 or later, so we can have more funding there. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't upgrade this to a full road project and add a few $100,000 more into the design efforts, and we could grab that from pavement replacement and add it in here. I think it would do a lot of good for the community to have this a full road project.
So do you want to do an amendment for this page? Are we going to be that formal? Are we gonna?
It'd probably be good if we did it formally, just so everyone listening knew kind of what was being said here, and make sure that staff is not misinterpreting the direction of the technical advisory committee.
And so before we make that change, I am curious, in your mind, as you looked at projects to include, would there have been a different project other than Dale that you might have included? With what we've now discussed and talking about, Dale being a full road project.
What do you mean?
So
Bump it on the list.
I see two options, right? I see, well, three options. We leave it how it is, and I think that we don't like that as much as making a full road project. And then the other option would be, is there something different that we replace?
I can't, I don't have anything in my mind because of how high it ranks. And I think turning it into a road project, a full narrow down the lanes, whatever we end up doing, would only make it score higher on the list because you're accounting for more of those different options that we look at as part of our criteria. I mean, when you go out and you look at Dale Street, the connections for the non-motorized are already waiting on either end. So that would be good. It's just that little extra for the road would bump it up that much more. But we can look at the score sheet if you guys want to see if there's something else. It's up to you guys.
Do you want a motion?
Sounds good.
Okay. Move that, Dale Street non-motorized improvements go from a non-motorized improvement to a Dale Street road improvement that would incorporate the whole look of all non-motorized and motorized. Reconstruct, move it to a reconstruction? Size and reconstruction?
Oh, I am not sure if it's a rehabilitation and reconstruction. I may have to. I'll look and see. We just call it an upgrade. And that tends to get us where we need to be, but, I'll have to,
Dale Street road upgrade.
okay, I think that'll get
And
us.
shoot, but we need to make sure that it's broad enough to incorporate the non-motorized, improvements that have been nominated.
Yeah, on other upgrade projects, we talk specifically about, rehabilitate or adding in non-motorized facilities and stuff, so we'll do something similar here.
There's my convoluted motion.
Okay, it's been moved. We have a second.
I second it.
And moved and seconded. Do we have any objections or any comments? Let's see, so if we don't have those, we could just consider it approved, correct?
This is a sub thing, it's not a major thing,
Yeah.
it's just page one.
Yeah, and then we'll do maybe like an overall approval with all the changes we talked about, because I have one more I need to bring up at one point, so I'll have to do that.
Okay, any objections then to the motion? Okay, hearing none, that motion is approved. So, thank you, this was all very helpful. So, let's move on then to the next page. It looks like these are mostly comments of appreciation for the Parks Foundation. Anyone want to discuss page 2? Okay, page 3. But many of these are by Bridge. And many of the comments are ones that would get incorporated into the projects at that level. Any questions or comments on page 3? Okay, page 4. It's a continuation of the biking bridge comments. Okay, hearing none, page 5.
Before we move on real quick, there is a comment from Nancy Pease kind of regarding this. I'll just read through the comment so everyone can hear it. The request is fund a land use and transportation study and create a standing committee. Is her ask, I believe. Comments 58, 172, 173, 178, sorry, it goes on and to why it relates to this. The TIP needs a third-party effort such as a consultant and special committee to evaluate where transportation investments will truly catalyze and subsidize infill redevelopment and mode shift, and where they'll increase VMT and sprawl. Response to comment 34 shows how dismissive AMATS is of the priority for infill and redevelopment, where we say infill is correlated with land use changes, which is outside AMATS process. A majority of the projects in tables 2 and 3 help to do this. AMATS sites mount AMATS, sorry, it's confusing, I don't know what it's saying. AMATS did no analysis to show that projects within land use focus areas will actually support infill or redevelopment, nor does the TIP show induced traffic and induced sprawl, which work against infill and redevelopment.
Doesn't the land use plan have to do that?
I believe if you go to comment 34, you can see that I talk about special land use features that specifically focus on how AMATS can help with infill and redevelopment. And that they were in the criteria and they funded, or they made up a portion of our criteria for it. And infill is strongly correlated with land use changes. And AMATs can help support with the transportation system, but cannot actually do the land use, the infill changes themselves. And we have projects that are in those supported corridors. I recognize we did not identify those. That's one of the comments we have in here to change, to list which projects are complete streets, which ones fall within the reinvestment focus areas, which ones fall in the transit supported development corridors, the greenway supported development corridors. Those key action things that the land use plan calls for are what we can help with. And that what was included in our criteria, and that's what these projects help to do and can help with that infill and redevelopment. In regards to creating a standing committee for land use and transportation, it's up to you guys what you want to do. We're funding a study for land use and transportation.
One question that I have on that regard is the MTP process. What is the scenario tool that's being used again?
Vision eval, it's our strategic planning model.
And is my understanding correct that land use will play into that in some degree?
Yes, land, it's like a regular model. It's a little more nimble, so it's more focused on things like greenhouse gas emission reductions, which is why I've mentioned we need to wait till we get that done, and then we can figure out what our target is. But it can look at things like land use changes, other stuff like that. But recognize land use itself and land use designations is up to the municipality of Anchorage. So AMATs can look at it and make recommendations, but it's ultimately their decision if they want to deviate from their 2040 land use plan or make changes to the land use plan.
So are you making a list of recommendations for the next MTP update?
Well, we're going to try and incorporate into this update if we can. And if there's anything we need to carry forward or try and look at for the next update, yes, we are making a list of those as we go
Because
along.
I would suggest that the idea of a standing committee and a land use transportation study would be a recommendation for future discussion.
Mhm.
Where there's more time and focus to really look at it. I'm trying to slam it in this update and trying to stand up something really quick just doesn't make a lot of sense. But putting it as a recommendation to take some time and look at it in depth I think would be a good idea.
Okay.
Putting it as a recommendation for, you can even put a timeline over within the year after the submittal approval of this MTP to have a recommendation on an outcome, to answer that question.
Okay. I just so everyone knows, I made note about what was just said to look at.
Okay.
Yes, we're not in public comments yet. We do have a public comment when we get to it, but we're not there yet.
The MTP can have a policy in it though, right, to do more with land use and transportation committee or other things.
Yeah, we can put in an action item that says to look at, what do we want to do for this? Or we can add in a study into one of the recommended projects to do a land use transportation type of integration study and maybe see if we can get some recommendations on how we can move forward. Because it's always hard. Remember that we are AMAT, so we're kind of our own group. That's not the municipality of Anchorage, but it often gets kind of confusing because of how integrated we are with certain things. So it's something to analyze, and I easily see this as a recommendation we can put in for this MTP to start that process and move forward.
I think it's a long process. I mean, you gotta get the right people, you have to think about who to get together, who would be a part of it, how it would stand up, how it would be managed. So that's a lot of thought to have, careful thought.
And I'd be interested to see what other MPOs are doing, if they are having their own kind of committees regarding transportation and land use, because we're in kind of a unique position where we're so integrated with the muni, so it's easy for us to work with the land long-range planning group. A lot of other MPOs don't have that. They're not housed within, they're not under one local entity. And so it may make it a little easier for us to do some more of the integration work. But I want to see how they handle it. in their way.
Yes, I'm supportive of land use and transportation going hand in hand with that point. And recognize that it does take multiple iterations and moving in that direction. So I think what we've talked about makes sense. Any other thoughts on page 4? Moving on to page 5, then, it looks like some feedback that was provided by a citizen was broken off into multiple comments. And that goes for the next few pages, so we could look at pages basically 4 through 4, 5, 6, all together. Questions from the committee?
So I do want to point out that you may see in here a number of comments about forwarding it to the 2050 MTP for consideration. The nomination process is happening right now for the 2050 MTP, so this is perfect timing. And we will note, which if this is the final version that's approved by the policy committee to forward these comments on, we will go ahead and move these into the nomination pool for the 2050 MTP.
And that's, you said that's open right now for nomination?
Yes, and it closes July 11th. And well, you can go to amats2050.com to find out more information on how to nominate a project. And you may note that the nomination process is a little easier this go around. We're not requiring a nomination form, but we have an interactive map that you can submit a comment on, or you can email it to us. Just a little plug there for the MTP.
Yep. With multiple planning projects that come back to back to back and are streamlined. Considered in that larger process.
Right, there's not a better chance of looking at it and how they interconnect it and affect each other better if they went to that tab.
We did get a comment from the public. Sorry, I know we have a lot to do, but I just want to mention this because it's exciting about how are we taking comments we hear from various other studies and integrating them into our process. And so that's one of the things we want to look at moving forward is there a system we can get for all of our public comments that house it in one thing? So then it's easier for us to just kind of, oh, we got it here on the non-motorized plan, we got it on this plan, and bring it all into the 2050.
And this commenter also makes a suggestion of having something geolocated and available in that way. So that's kind of a creative thought that the MTP seems like a good overall umbrella that could consider how to integrate all the comments.
And that's one of the things that's nice about the interactive map for the MTP is it kind of gets that geolocation aspect to it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any thoughts? So moving on, we have the next pages 7, 8, and 9 are in response to another active and interested citizen. Were you saying you received another email from this one as well?
Yes, Ms. Richardson did send an email at 2:08 today to be forwarded to you all for review and consideration during this meeting. There's a lot of comments in here. There's one ask. There's a lot of opinions in here about things. There is one ask. Do you want me to go ahead and, it appears to be one ask. Do you want me to mention it right now? Okay. It looks like South Addition Community Council asked to amend the TIP to study and rebuild A and C streets as complete streets. This would have a positive effect of raising property values in the underbuilt and even deteriorating R3. But that amendment was dismissed in a number of ways as inappropriate. So it's not, I guess not really an ask, it's just an opinion on there. But I do want to point out that no, a nomination was not submitted to study A and C as complete streets. Both nominations that were submitted were reconstructing A and C And our response was that hasn't been evaluated as part of the MTP model to see what impacts, both positive and negative, it has on the transportation system. Other projects that are similar have already been reviewed, such as Fireweed Lane rehabilitation, both versions of Spinard Road rehabilitation, because they're looking at doing lane reductions. Northern Lights Benson lane reduction, which we were recommending a study for because we need more information on it. So it's pretty common for us to look at these projects in the model as a transportation system as a whole before we actually move forward on it. If you guys want to recommend a study, not out of line, it's just, that was not what was nominated.
And the MPP will also give us more details and assist with, that's something that can be looked at in the MPP.
We're already recommending forwarding that comment for review during the MTP process, where we can take a look at what it would take to reconstruct or what impacts it would have on the network as a whole if that portion of A and C were reconstructed. And I believe it's lane reduction, sidewalk width increases, and some other stuff that we can look at.
That'd be more cost effective to do it during the MTP, do those model runs, trying to guesstimate what in a TIF.
I agree, yes.
As we're looking at the whole system. So other questions, other thoughts about the comments from Ms. Richardson? There are, yeah, definitely, it feels like there's some consistency with some of the feedback of thinking more multimodal, thinking more kind of land use and transportation connection and all of those things. Which I know that when I went to the MTP open house, those were very key pieces of information that were also heard.
Yes, thank you.
Let's see, so moving then on to page 10. We have some additional GDF in the river. Other comments of DOT.
So really quickly before we move on beyond this page, I did want to mention to you all, it was sent to the policy committee because that was the ask, but there was a resolution from Birchwood Community Council that was submitted to us after the close of the public comment period. Yeah, sorry, I'm just finding it. Birchwood Community Council, that is the same resolution that was passed by the SBURSA, so comment number 96. So it had the same intent to it. I did look at it and it looks like the language is the exact same, except for maybe the therefore be it resolved was Birchwood instead of SBURSA. But it was submitted after the close of the public comment period.
And this is with regards to the proportionate percentage of projects being in the river area. versus the
Yeah.
goal, is that?
It looks like there was some concern that the District 2 population has 47,069 people, which makes up roughly 16% of the municipality of Anchorage. And they're trying, and this is saying that the funding in the 23 through 26 TIP doesn't equate to at least 16% or some equivalent amount. There wasn't a lot of specificity in this. But one of the things we pointed out is our comment here, as well as during the Community Advisory Committee for AMATS, who had a similar resolution they wanted to pass, but ultimately did not get approved, is that projects are funded over multiple TIP cycles. So looking at one TIP doesn't give you a complete picture of how much funding is going to a specific district. And we don't look at district population as a determination for how to fund projects. That's not equity. And that's nearly impossible for us to do, especially as projects span multiple districts. So how do you break up who gets what percentage of the pie? The thing to recognize with the TIP is that it rotates through the years of where funding is done based on the nominations. So the last couple of and needs, with nominations needs. So the last couple of tip cycles were a significant amount of funding in the hillside area. This looks like it's more in kind of the midtown, downtown, a few other spots, area. I do want to let you know, we do actually have projects in Tugak Eagle River, some pretty, two substantial projects. One is a $60 million road rehabilitation for Eagle River Road, including a pathway extension. And then there's the the pathway extension of the Glen Highway pathway, continuing it further north, which has been supported. So those are in the tip.
And I remember I actually listened into the Citizen Advisory Committee. If I understood correctly, some of those projects that are identified in this tip, their full funding is not in this tip because they're started in this tip and then additional funding in the next tip will kick in. And in fact, a large percentage of their project would be in the next tip, such that Eagle River, Shuyak area will get overabundance of a higher percentage from their population. And not to justify that we're trying to hit percentage, but as kind of to your point, is my understanding correct on that?
Yeah, it could be the next tip or the tip after, but I mean, you gotta look at it as kind of like cycles. Some areas get high and low depending upon the years and the needs identified through our process and the scoring and everything like that. So if you look out at the next few tip cycles or the next tip, if the Eagle River Road rehabilitation is fully funded in that one, that's 60 million of the 130 million we get over those 4 years. So that's almost 50%, 46% of the program for that one project alone. So it's one of the reasons why we don't look at the percentage of funding going to the different districts because of how federal projects are broken out over the years in the tip.
Like a big project takes a lot of the funds. Yeah. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Any questions on page 10?
Really quickly, as we're going to 10 to 11, you'll notice that there are some comments in here from FHWA. I received an email from our FHWA contact person who looked over the draft version of the tip, and she had some questions about some things that we need to show in the tip. And so you can see the responses in there, like year of expenditure dollars, trying to clean up the front page to be a little easier for people to see costs and revenue, to add in the agency responsibility into the tip. So you'll see a lot of those comments on there is why we're making those changes. Oh, yes, and you'll also notice we have a number of comments. It's kind of starting on, or very out about the tip narrative. Some changes to the tip narrative. If these get approved, staff will be working on updating the tip narrative during June and July, and we'll have it available in August.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend you changing the title of the SIP mandated projects to read transportation control measure identified, because they're talking about the federally defined transportation control measures, which we really don't have any.
Oh, okay.
So our public education is not a transportation control measure, for example. It is a committed SIP measure, but it's not a federally defined transportation control measure.
I thought it said it is a TCM.
Well, none of those aren't. They're SIP measures, they're control measures that help maintain our carbon monoxide reductions in our maintenance plan. But you have to go look at what the federally defined transportation control measures are.
Okay, I'll have to look into this. We do recommend that change, so I'll have to look into the SIP more, what we say, and maybe we'll just say SIP measures, SIP mandated measures instead of TCMs and that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, what they want to do is, TCMs are really important because in the conforming language, you have to show that the TIPs and the MTPs, the federal funding being spent in the area do not delay any implementation of transportation control measure.
Mhm.
It's really easy for us because we really don't have any formal federal transportation control measures.
Okay.
We have mandated SIP measures, which FHWA doesn't really think about, because that's an air quality issue. They're more worried about their federally defined transportation control measures.
And we don't have those.
Totally different,
Okay,
two different things. We can have those in our SIPs, but we typically really don't have them in our SIP because our air quality problems that were caused by traffic are really caused by the traffic anymore. We've addressed them.
okay,
Do you want to make a motion of how to adjust this comment?
yeah, I have it in
But
here.
not
as-
the actual definition right in front of me because I don't want to mess up. It's,
Do you want to just say SIP mandated?
I think we just
Projects.
leave it as is what I mean, I think that's what we have in our TIF is SIP mandated control measures, don't we?
I just take out the word transportation, it's, use a different term.
Is that, yeah, it's the control measures identified in the SIP. Strike the word transportation out.
Okay,
And we can help you look up and how to answer, you know, this. They just want a better one-to-one relationship because but the FHWA person's looking at this, didn't really understand. That's their generic, how they handle everybody else in the country. But we're a little different here.
so the current tip says SIP mandated projects and programs.
Correct.
Do we want to spell out SIP? Or just leave it as SIP?
Well, it's always good enough to have an acronym.
If you guys could make a, we can change it to say, to spell out SIP, if you want to make a motion to change this.
Motion
comment.
to change the title to a state implementation plan control measures or control measures identified in the state implementation plan.
Okay, that'll probably be easier to control.
Measures identified in the state implementation plan. And then on the response document, we just have to come up with a better response for them.
So these two tables, or these two cells here,
Yeah,
staff response and that staff recommendation, the
Yeah.
comment 105.
yes.
That is consistent with
Well, so
the
they're
title change you
asking,
just mentioned.
they want to know which projects will be our TCMs. What you could say is that we'll identify which projects in table, what's the table now, 5, that are transportation control measures will be identified with an asterisk. And then you can put a little asterisk on table 5, those projects above with an asterisk are federally defined as a transportation control measure, and there's won't be in there, or there'll be one. That way, you're meeting what her question is, which is they would like to have the TCMs identified. So you fix in a way to identify which ones are actual
Okay.
defined TCMs. And then the other ones just say control measures within the SIP, which are different than TCMs.
Okay.
Some are the same, some are not.
So is your motion to make all those changes?
Yes, please.
I have to sit down with you after just to make sure I got it all, but I
Yeah,
think
we'll do it tomorrow. Yeah.
well, we have to post it today, so we'll
Okay,
Okay.
well,
we'll get it.
we'll figure it out.
Okay, anyone want to second the motion? Okay. Motion been moved and seconded. Any objections to approving the motion?
Who's second?
Mr. Bowman. So moved by Ms. Pyle, second by Mr. Bowman, and it is approved. No objections. To make those changes to comment 1.
And table 5.
Table 5. Okay. Page 11. Any questions on the committee on page 11? How about page 12?
12 has this, on Nancy Pease's comments, she wrote on the comments 117 and 136 is unconscionable to replace the fleet with more diesel buses. TAC air quality representatives should speak out on this. And so I'm gonna speak out, even though you're gonna hop in here,
Yep.
is that what people may not realize is that in the nineties, we tried to get compressed natural gas, transit fleet changed. Found out that unless you have the transit bus barn upgraded with the correct ventilation system, you can't put CNG vehicle buses in the facility. So until that infrastructure gets changed, it can't do non-diesel buses. So I would suggest taking out the word diesel and just say bus replacement and not have it specific to the type of buses. And if the infrastructure or grants, whatever you guys are always trying to do, actually finds a way to update the bus barn in order to handle non-diesel engines, that then you can do replacement buses that fit without having to come back and change the language. So I would change it now
Happy to do
to
that.
take out diesel and just say replacement buses, and then let you guys do your work of trying to deal with it.
Yeah, there's also a significant amount of study that needs to go in to be able to access any of the new federal funds to be able to do alternative fuels and things like that. So we need to prepare for that as well.
Yeah, but we
Lots of
we
prep.
tried in late nineties to have, we had, DOT had compressed natural gas cars, DEC had compressed natural gas cars, they tried to do a bus, and that's when they found out that they didn't have the ventilation, and they couldn't put them in the barn. And that was a problem. So I just recommend, I move that you update the project list in table 5 to say,
It does not.
It doesn't say.
It hasn't said that for quite a while.
okay, well.
And we already looked at changing over to electric buses, but I believe they already tried that and there were significant concerns with switching over to electric buses. So that was taken out as well.
Yeah, we don't call out diesel in table 5
Okay.
or
well,
7, or
Yay,
is
don't have
it
to do
7
it.
anymore? 9?
Yeah, I'm trying to look on table 9, I think is now transit, and I don't see diesel
I'm pretty sure we don't.
specifically called out. I think it was removed a while ago for that very reason,
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
many tips ago.
I didn't know that, but reading from them, I have spoken out. Further requests for the comment.
And I have been subsequently chastised. Thank you.
Well, you haven't been chastised, you've been informed about what we did in the 1990s.
Educating.
It looks like staff response does say diesel, so should we have uncommon?
Well, for the record, the bus buy that we are currently in is a diesel replacement.
Got it.
So, I mean, that is where we are. That's our reality.
I did get that response from public
From transit.
transportation, right?
Got it, okay.
Sorry, Aaron.
Okay, so if that's accurate, then we leave it as is.
This is Shayna,
Go
just
ahead.
chiming in for what it's worth. We are communicating, Jamie and I, regarding improvements in the technology and prices of buses. So we're monitoring it, but yeah, it's just not quite there. But it seems like that is almost irrelevant to this particular comment, is what I'm hearing.
Is this the Nancy P's comment?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, I was looking for it in the table and I was
No.
not finding it.
well, there's comment 117, and then there's also another one, I believe, 136 later on about, the one later on is about electric vehicles for buses. So they're kind of hand in hand.
But also, I mean, Jamie, you guys don't replace your entire fleet, right?
No, right now we're looking at 11 vehicles for this first replacement. And it also is based on useful life and all of that kind of stuff. So we do have a little bit of time to start evaluating other options like Shayna and I have been discussing. So, but the current purchase right now is 11 diesel.
Out of how many?
64.
Okay, so Nancy Peace has comments through page 14, so any other questions or comments from the committee?
I guess because we're on Nancy Pease's comments, I wanted to kind of maybe go through some of the rest of Nancy Pease's comments since we're in that part now. So I just wanted to kind of read off the comments and just let you know. So another comment she had is adjust speed and safety criteria, adjust the project scores based on Vision Zero, which is the locally adopted plan, DOT death targets are unacceptable. Vision Zero is in our criteria. Next, fund a greenhouse gas emission reduction plan. We already kind of talked about that. Next is delete 92nd Avenue scooter underpass. It's still timely to revise this $200 million mile project on the Seward Highway. Delete the unneeded underpass, which will only induce more driving trips and degrade a low-income residential area. Next, delete Academy Vanguard collector roads. It is still timely to delete this unneeded shortcut to Walmart, saving $5 million in this tip and $18 million total in the later years. And just, you know, these are all in here and responded to. I'm just rereading what she submitted after. Next, delete MLK Junior Avenue extension. The staff, it's comment 131. The staff response is dismissive. The project will induce vehicle traffic and reduce safety and impact wetlands. If you go to comment 131, I'll read the response I got directly from the Department of Transportation project managers. The initial environmental assessment work completed so far suggests the impacts of the project in its current configuration will likely outweigh the benefits. The MOA and DOT are exploring the possibility of closing out the project. If anyone has recommendations on how to be less dismissive, please let me know. Next one is a fund AC streets as complete streets. There is no federal mandate to model complete streets before putting them into the TIP. The study pedestrian safety for AC is already in the TIP. So just expand the project and start a complete street design for 500,000. I'm not sure what study they're talking about the pedestrian safety for AC already being in the TIP. There is no, there is an AMAT safety plan, but that is not specific to A and C. And I believe this commenter is correct. There's no federal mandate to model other than as part of the MTP process. It's just what AMATS does as part of its process to model these large roadway changes to see what impacts they have on the network. Next is revised spending for 3rd, 4th, and 5th Avenues. The public wants re-signalization to be part of a comprehensive downtown traffic approach. Don't fund signal replacements until there's a traffic pattern that promotes infill, economic revitalization, and active transportation.
And we talked about that.
We recommended removing the 5th Avenue ones, but the 3rd and 4th are still in here. 4th Avenue is already underway, and 3rd Avenue is a new one that we're recommending. And I will just point out, the reason these signal projects are in here is because the signals are very old and they need to be replaced ASAP. We can do both kind of as we go along. There is a study in here for downtown streets studies to look at what to do with downtown in terms of changing things from one-way to two-way or road ownership and stuff. So they're happening at the same time. Next one is edit for biased language. This is transformational thinking. The term improvements sugarcoats any project. Descriptions for roads and all projects should be succinctly worded to describe the outcome. Lane capacity, speed, traffic volume, separation of modes. Use an outside editor to advise AMATs on this. Okay, we can look at future descriptions to help with that. Transparency, release the score sheets. Release the transcripts of project scoring. The public has not been shown any test project scores. The public deserves evidence that the scoring is natural and free from outside influences, as the staff claims in response to comment 171. I will talk about this. I've gotten a number of comments from Cheryl and Nancy to release the individual score sheets from the scoring committee members. That is not what we do at AMATS, and I do not recommend we do that. Part of what we need to do in our process and approach is give staff an ability to score without fear of outside influence and having to worry about what somebody from the public or a policy committee member thinks of their scores. We did release the total overall scores for each project and by each category so people could see how we got to that total to the public. Those scores are what we used during the scoring committee. We did not look at the individual score sheets because that was then, they did their thing. We moved into the next phase, which was looking at the total scores. And that's what we made our decisions on. And that's what was released to the public. Next is fund GPS-based data, citizens data collection. I need more research on this, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I just don't know if I can recommend adding it in right now because I don't know what we can and can't do. I think they're talking about like Strava and other things like that where people are using their own phones to collect the data. I think that's already out there, but I know there's been privacy concerns regarding that. So we can look into it.
I was wondering if that was part of the regional household travel survey.
We would look at that as part of the regional household travel survey too, but there might be more we can do, especially for the non-motorized facilities around town. So this is already something that we're already looking at internally with traffic, MOA traffic and other groups. So I'll make note of this. And then the last one is changing the transit person to more, or transit to no more diesel buses, which we've talked about. So those are the 12 comments asking for specific changes from the NCPs.
So that gets us
14.
through 14. So Nancy, please just give us to me, it's page 14. Any questions through page 14? And I agree that those are those are really great ideas. I don't know how we integrate them into the tip right now.
We definitely need some more research on some of them, and now that we've been sent them and I've seen them, I think it's something we can continue to look at on a few of those items.
And the MTT is a great opportunity to do that, so.
I will include those as nominated projects for the MTP since they're now in the public record.
So that is how I see about it. They're great ideas, not quite ready for the tip at this point, but definitely ready for the MTP to be considered. And then that would be great to have some movement on them as the next processes come through, which is what it sounds like a lot of the staff recommendations are. Moving on to page 15, 16, and 17, there are some community council comments. Northeast, Rabbit Creek, and Rogers Park.
I'll now make a motion or let you guys know about another change we're making. Now that we're on page 16, comment 153. We have comment 153 regarding the Rabbit Creek Road reconstruction project, Seward Highway to Golden View Drive, asking us to look at left turn pockets instead of center turn lane. So I reached out to DOT staff or the DOT project manager and asked about this, and we came up with this new project description to help accommodate that, where we say project would reconstruct Rabbit Creek Road from Seward Highway to Golden View Drive, and we'll look at left turn accommodations where possible. You know, as I say in the comment, there are right-of-way concerns with the non-motorized facility being looked at and the left turn pocket. So it's all there as a possibility. It just needs to be looked at as part of the design effort.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any questions? On the community council comments? Okay. And look at next pages.
Which page are we on?
So page 18, we jump into comments from state representative and senator. think many of these same topics we've already been discussing. Any other questions or comments from the board? It's kind of focus again on complete streets. Okay, and then our last page, 19. This is a lot of great work by the citizens and stakeholders that I think is very timely with the MTP. I appreciate staff and the effort that you put into doing your reviews. You know, that some of the commenters would really like for them to be included in the tip. But I feel like what we've talked about, you know, there's the other planning processes going on that would be a great location for many of these.
I do have one other change really quickly. It is for project RDY 00018, Third Avenue Signals and Lighting Upgrade. It seems there was an error in the termini when I put this project into the draft tip that I did not catch until after we had already posted the comment response summary. But it was pointed out to me that the current termini is Cordova to Ingra Street. And what was nominated and what we need to have in here is E Street to Cordova Street. So it moves it further west. Kind of starts on that end and then would work its way over. If you guys agree with that change, I would like action from you. If not, then we'll have to see if that's still okay with the old terminal.
Someone like to make a motion? You better not play the motion, so maybe we'll.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that
What,
one.
what comment was that?
It's not a comment in here. It's one that I have to bring on the
Just the
floor.
project, we gotta change the tree.
On which project? Is the project?
Third Street,
Third Avenue Signals and Lighting Upgrade.
so the term needs to change to,
E Street to Cordova Street.
Aaron, Kent Colhase.
Yes.
Aaron, I believe you're asking for motion. I move to change the termini of the Third Avenue lighting project to read A Street to Cordova, E Street to Cordova,
E Street to Cordova.
A Street to Cordova,
E Street.
E
Echo.
Street, Cordova.
Thank you.
okay, motion moved. We have a second.
That's it, I'll second.
Okay, seconded. Do we have anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. That goes through all the comment response. Any other items on that, Aaron?
Yeah, we just need to open it to the public. I do have some public comments, so once we move into that realm, I can read them out loud so you can hear.
Should we make a motion on the whole item to move this for recommendation of the policy committee and then do the public
No, we
comments?
do
come, or
public
do
comments. We do
first?
public comments first and then motion.
Okay,
Sorry, I'm confused with how certain other groups do it.
sounds good. Okay, so I think we're ready then for public comments.
Okay, I'll read off the public comments and then we can move into if anyone wants to give testimony. I just want to make sure these are heard. Okay, the first one from Nancy Pease. A list of projects that lie within the land use focus zones do not analyze whether there is a true catalytic effect. This is an iterative analytic process that AMATS is not doing and MOA is not doing.
And that's a chat comment on.
And yeah, that's why I'm reading out loud because it's in the Teams. I just want to make sure everyone here sees it. Next comment from Nancy Pease. I believe it was when we were talking about some of these ideas from her about new that we want to look at. She says, these are not new ideas. Some of these were submitted over a month ago. Comments 22, 45, 52, 64, and 74, the comments she's referring to. I've looked at those comments and all but comment 22, we've responded to that we will somehow move forward, either sending it to a project 19 for consideration. Staff will look at it for future tip criteria updates. Comment 22 is the only one where it talks about remove value judgment language from the tip. And this is from Bike Anchorage where it says improve or improvements. And we just said, thank you for your comment, but we can go ahead and do some additional analysis on that and look and see what other areas do to see if we can make some changes to the descriptions to help with that value judgment remove from there.
Okay, so I have heard from various kind of bloggers and others that do comment about improvements. Some things are projects, you could debate whether it's an improvement or not. So I have heard that before. I guess, is this the time to make that change and kind of do a whole scale, instead of calling projects improvements, call them projects? It sounds like that's what they're asking for.
Okay.
So what is, any thoughts from the committee on that comment?
Say the closer we can make the description to the actual intent of the project, the better. If it's a rehabilitation, we say that. If it's a redesign, we say that.
Go ahead.
I would agree with that, that the more descriptive we can be on the nature of the project, improvements usually is a bit of a catch-all that's been used historically.
We can go back through and look at some of these. I am looking at some of these other ones. So the new ones we put in for Lois Drive and Folker, at least, we don't say improvements. We say things like upgrades, collector standards, lighting upgrades, addition of non-motorized facilities, drainage upgrades. But I do see back here, Eagle River Way or Eagle River Road rehabilitation, we do see ADA improvements. So maybe we can say ADA upgrades or ADA something we can figure out. I can work with DOT and the Muni on maybe what type of language works for the description to get the idea across of what we're doing there by helping to remove improvements. We can look at some of the other project descriptions as well. I'm not going to have enough time to do this before we have to post this for the policy committee, but we can easily try and do, we'll have to look into this more, but I don't know if we can make the change right now or if we need to come back later with an amendment and update all of the descriptions after it's been approved. Because I guess, Matt, I'm looking at you. If we go through here and during the interagency consultation, we update the,
Changing the name is not a,
Right.
but changing the description, it's saying instead of saying improvement, say something else.
Or if it's
I
just a
don't see
word
that as-
change.
That won't be, okay, good. Then maybe what we can do, and I see Nancy has another comment that upgrade is synonym for improvements. She wants us to put everything that's gonna happen on that project, wider lanes, shoulders, crossings. The problem is we don't know that at this point.
Right.
That has to be looked at when the design happens, so I cannot add those into the description at this point.
And as you were saying upgrades, you were saying, what I heard was, this is the standard for the road or the path or whatnot, going from what's there to have it consistent with the standard. Is kind of what I heard from right, which maybe that gets away from using upgrades, but that's kind of how you were using it. So if it's just defined as upgrade, indicates taking from what it is where it doesn't meet standard, but there's some nuance there. I can.
And this is where I think maybe right now is not the best time because I need to sit down with DOT and the Muni and talk about this some more because there's a lot going on here about changing this.
I think this could equally apply, starting with the end.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Sounds good. So does the committee have the desire? to
Is that
make a
all the
motion?
public comments?
So those are all of the written ones, but we still have to open it up for public testimony.
Okay. Sounds good. Maybe we should open that public testimony then. Are there any comments from members of the public that would provide comment or testimony.
Nancy has her hand raised. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to comment. And I wanted to mostly address the projects. But before I do that, I know that you didn't spend any time on my comments or Cheryl's comments about the broken process, but you should be aware of it. I hope you will read those portions of our letters. And it's not just the two of us. I just want to read you one quick comment from the response summary to the goals and objectives submitted by a biker. He collected some language from one of their bike forum chats. And he said, many found that your focus was so misguided, it was not even worth their time. And some argue that is, after all, your intent to so alienate the public that the public gives up because, as has been the case all along, you do what you want no matter how many people die. So that's powerful language, and that is the level of frustration in working within the AMATS public comment process. And the fact that the Assembly cannot even have 1 week to put in public comments on this $1.27 billion budget, that's also emblematic. Now on to the projects. Specifically with the greenhouse gas emissions study, I didn't quite catch all of that testimony, but what I'm hoping you will do is put several $100,000 toward a study for a greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan. And Aaron said, you know, he could pull money from pavement replacement to fund the study for the Volker and 40, whatever it was, 40th Drive studies that you were talking about. So if there's that kind of flexibility, then pull that money from somewhere and fund it. It's unconscionable that we do not have any approach, concrete actions toward greenhouse gas emissions reductions in this plan that goes till 2036. Because we have a 2040 goal of 50% reductions, and we can't do it unless we start reforming our transportation system. So I'm asking for you to put money in this tip and a date, like a 1-year date. Second, same thing with the AC Complete Streets idea. A study of pedestrian safety was nominated for the tip, just the way pedestrian safety was nominated for Volker Street. One of the staff's comments was that the Complete Streets wasn't nominated, but if you can expand the Volker Street project, then you can expand this idea from A and C Street. You know, someone said pedestrian safety, will expand it to a complete street study and pull the money from somewhere and get that going. That's my second request. Third, releasing scoring sheets. Aaron said that's not what we do at AMATS. I don't feel that that's a very good explanation. There shouldn't be a need to shield the scorers, but if there is, then just release them anonymously. This is a policy recommendation you can make. It doesn't cost any money. Please do that. Glad to hear your.
So Nancy, you've had 3 minutes. If you could finish up, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. So with the citizen real-time data collection again, could you put a timeline and who is responsible for pursuing that so that we get some real action on that? And the same thing with the biased language, the language reform. Can you put a timeline on that? And who's going to report back to you on that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Shana, I saw you put a comment in there. Did you want to speak up about that?
Sure, it's relevant, but it doesn't quite get to what Nancy is trying to get to. We're finalizing a greenhouse gas inventory. I would think it will be able to release it within the next month. There's no reduction plan to go with it, but it will help us get there because it shows kind of where our emissions are coming from. And it's a 2015 and a 2020 inventory.
So Shane, I have a question for you. Would it be, because you don't have that report out yet, and it's going to be a bit, even if it's only a month, would it be better to put the plan request the project to the MTP so that we can look at all the studies at once within the MTP framework. Then try, and you have that already out, it'll be easier to inform.
I think that might make more sense, and I guess I would lean to Aaron on that.
I mean, if whatever you have available, we will take and bring it into the MTP and start looking at it. I mean, as Nancy just mentioned, we need methods and modeling to get this moving forward. That's what we're looking at for the MTP, but we actually need time to do it. I can't just say, yes, it'll be here tomorrow, because I don't know what it looks like without actually looking at it. So we are moving forward with it. It will take time to get there. So whatever Shannon can provide us will help.
Yeah, and I can get you the data within the next probably 2 weeks. I mean, this has taken us quite a while just to do this. So then to get to the reduction piece is also a big lift, but this is a start.
Thank you.
Some of the other items that Nancy requested were timelines. Are we the right group to put timelines on?
I mean,
those items?
yeah, we can look at it, but the thing is we have to make sure there's enough staff time available to do this on top of everything else we have to do.
Which is why the MTP is the more appropriate vehicle than it
Yes.
is for a TIP. TIP is a short range funding plan where the MTP is the long range full picture, has all the modeling, has all the inputs. It looks at everything holistically, where this is a snapshot in a short period, that our immediate funding needs. So some of these big picture items would fit better and have more, better time to think things through than trying to just put things in now.
And yes, and the MTP itself, it has the funding and the consultants already on board to help us, as Nancy is pointing out in her additional comments. I'm not going to keep reading them because we're running out of time.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think the MTP, as we put together the projects, I would be interested in the updating the terminology used and have that be the comment that is getting forwarded to them, so.
And it's for the 2050 MTP that's updating right now. We're not talking about delaying it to another. It's what we're working on right now.
And
Yeah.
typically, don't we, when we do an MTP in cycle of a TIP, sometimes you do amendments of the TIP to bring to align the TIP in with the new MTP. I mean, we've done amendments like that to move in shorter term projects into a TIP funding cycle. So it's not, it doesn't, just because we're doing the TIP now doesn't mean it won't be amended later once the MTP gets done.
Right. As the MTP comes on and gives us a lot of these bigger ideas, more concrete information, at that time, we can have some amendments if that's needed.
And just to clarify, for the two projects on table 5 are transportation control measure projects. I looked
Okay.
them up.
Okay, so that's what I thought. So,
They are, I have too many steps I have to deal with.
so is it okay for us to call them transportation control measures like we have in our contract?
Yes. you
Okay.
can leave it the way.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
withdraw my.
Okay, so with the motion withdrawn, then is that all that's required is to withdraw?
Whoever seconded it for the changes in table 5.
Well, second,
Sounds good.
Yes,
So
yes. So we just leave it as staff's already proposed.
is that good? Did we? Okay. So that motion then has been withdrawn, and second withdrawn. Okay, any additional public comments? Okay, hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
Move to forward the 2023-2026 TIP comment response summary and the tables to the policy committee for review and approval
Second.
as amended.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Kyle, seconded by Ms. Acton. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved.
So we have about 19 minutes left of the meeting and we have some pretty important items to get through here. In order to be efficient, I'm gonna have to ask that we move up an item for earlier consideration, and that's the 23 through 20, or the 19 to 22 tip amendment number 3. We must get that approved today. So we have to do the air quality conformity determination first, and then the actual tables itself.
That's C and D moving forward,
Yes.
and that would need a motion to make that adjustment of the agenda.
I so move.
Second,
There we go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Suchek, second by Ms. Hile. To move items 5C and 5D ahead of 5B, which means that those are next. It also, as we're talking, we could extend if the committee is amenable to that. Should we get through those first and then see where we are?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll race through it real quick. So the first one is the 2019 to 22 tip amendment number 3, air quality conformity determination. You've already seen this. This has gone out for public comments. We did not get any public comments on this air quality determination itself. It's been updated based on the changes that were made during the comment period. Those were programmatic changes, as we talked about earlier, so shifting funding around. I reached out to Matt Stitchick and we already talked about it. So what's before you today is recommending approval of the air quality conformity determination for amendment number 3 to the 2019 to 22 tip.
Any questions or comments from the committee? And this is with at the airport, the cold storage, is that what?
Yes, this was, that's why this is kind of taking a little longer than normal, as we did have to extend our public comment period to add in the cold storage facility that's going in on the airport property.
those things, you had a big project. You
Yeah.
gotta go through.
Well, this one was quicker because it didn't actually require
Trigger
the
one, yeah.
transportation conformity, so.
Was there anything else that's part of this or just that really?
Oh, no, there's a number of items we'll get to, but that's on the actual tables themselves. This is just the air quality conformity, which we have to approve before the tables themselves.
Right, because you're locking in the table. Got it.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from public? Okay, what is the will of the committee?
I move to recommend approval of the air quality conformity determination for tip amendment number 3 to the policy committee for approval.
Second,
Okay, moved by Mr. Suchek, seconded by Ms. Hile. Are there any objections? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. And moving on to item 5D.
Thank you. So 5D are the actual tip tables themselves. Sorry, there seems to be something wrong with our screen where it's frozen up there. So we have changed it on where the public can see, but we're having a hard time getting you guys to see it. So these are the actual tip tables that go along with the air quality conformity determination you just approved. So you already saw the majority of the changes that are highlighted in red. There are a couple of other changes. Hey, Christine, you're actually pushing buttons and it's showing up on the screen over here.
so but it's in the memo, right? So
So,
it's just. we
All
can
the
see-
changes are in the memo. Any of the ones, we did get some after or during the comment period that were some agency changes. They're highlighted in yellow. And they have to do with just keeping the projects on schedule, moving funding around programmatic level changes for the projects. So they're all incorporated in there for your review. What's being asked is approval or recommend approval to the policy committee of amendment 3 with all these changes in. And this does have the cold storage facility as well as a number of other changes that we've kind of talked about previously.
So the addition of the cold storage and then shifting around programmatic budget to keep things moving.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
All of these changes in red are changes from the last time we seen this.
No, they're all of the changes combined.
Okay.
I was debating on how to show that, but I wanted to make sure that people understood we're talking about all of the changes from the very beginning till now for this comment period.
The memo, you can see, the cover memo really puts it down succinctly, that's why I would.
And it's not the paper copy that you're looking at.
What about the recommendation to change Dale Street to a?
That is the 23 through 26 tip. We're on the 2019 to 22 tip.
Thank you.
That's okay. I do want to point out there's an error in the memo. I forgot to include the cold storage facility into the memo. But it is in the tip tables and I will update it as soon as we are done here. You can see it on table 11. It's the last project in there in red.
On the table.
On the electronic version of the 2019 through 2022 on table 11. It's on there, so I will go in as soon as we're done here, if it gets approved, and add it to the memo for the policy committee members to see that it's one of the changes we're recommending.
Okay. Yeah, so any questions from the committee? How about any questions or comments from the public? Anyone online? Like some of the comments.
Yeah, so we got a comment from Nancy Pease. I'll go ahead and read it out loud. Although the TAC did not commit to any timelines as part of your draft tip approval, I hope you will set some dates for staff to respond to you on the issues of bias language and citizen real-time data collection. And I will hope you direct staff to make the tip scoring sheets public. Even when there was a comment period for the draft tip scoring criteria, AMS did not share any trial runs to see how the criteria favor or penalize certain types of projects. Thank you for your time.
So that was with the prior, well, that's not this.
No, it's a comment she just made.
Okay.
So I'm reading it out loud to make sure we are responding.
This is Matt Stitchick. I move to approve amendment number 3, tip tables for the 2019 to 2022 tip to the policy committee for their approval.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Stitchick, second by Ms. Sile.
To include the upcoming changes.
Well, that's a memo change.
Yeah, it's a memo.
Are there any objections to the motion? To approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, that gets us through those items. So we have 10 minutes on our time frame. And the items on our agenda left are the UMed Public Involvement Plan and the 2023 safety targets. And then we have some project and plan updates. Do you think in 10 minutes we can get through 5B and 5E? Or is that kind of pushing it a little bit too close?
You know, we could probably get through the PIP if you guys want to. I guess it depends on what you guys are wanting to do. Are you, the PIP probably may take some time, but we,
May be delayed to the next meeting.
Yeah. Is there?
yeah, we're gonna have to. I'm looking at them. I just don't think we can do them justice to stick them in real quick.
I agree.
But if you're willing to wait, we do have an individual here presenting on the downtown trails update. It'd be nice to at least get that update done since we have a consultant here. I apologize, Juan, you're on the phone for the PIP amendment or UMed, but we'll have to delay it to the next meeting.
So do we just need a motion to be able to move past those and?
If you want to make a motion to delay them until the June agenda, we can do that.
I moved, move the, item D and item E to the June. And slide to the, item 6 on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lehman, second by Mr. Van Hoen. Any objections to the motion to move items 5B and 5E to the June meeting? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. We're moving down to 6A, Downtown Trails Connection Project Update.
Okay, we have a project manager here. Do you need to share screen or electronic or anything?
Juan's online. If she
Okay.
can share her screen, she can focus the folks online.
Is it still?
It's 10 minutes of time, 9 minutes of time.
I'm gonna get close to the mic so folks can hear me. And I'll just, here's a hard copy of what we're trying to get online.
I think the committee's will be.
My name is John Picar. I'm with Kinney Engineering. Here to present the Downtown Trail Connection. This is a plan, this is a project that's been on the books since 97. And essentially, we're proposing to connect the coastal trail to the Ship Creek Trail. So this project starts at the end of Fifth Avenue at Elderberry Park. It then proceeds north about 1,200 feet to where it intersects the railroad's property. So that's a important thing with this project. This project needs to be approved by the railroad's board in order to move forward, since it's on their rights of way. As such, they'll be looking to not impact their future rail operations or their existing lease properties. The project from Elderberry Park connects to the small boat launch. And then from the small boat launch, the project will follow Ship Creek east to where it intersects C Street. And that's where the existing Ship Creek Trail ends. Currently, we're in our preliminary engineering environmental stage, doing NEPA work for our environmental document. The project we've classified, we've delineated wetlands so far. We performed some preliminary engineering to develop a cost estimate. Currently, the project budget is at 10.2 million. That's with a 25% contingency. And we're also working to, we've been surveying the site. That work recently wrapped up the last couple of weeks. We were waiting for the ice to melt off Ship Creek. So now that's the final bit of survey should be delivered in the next few weeks. We've also did some Eagle site surveys, nothing observed, and all in support of the environmental document. Today, this is our first step in just starting our public outreach with the intent of also going to the policy committee. After that, we'll reach out to the community councils, South Edition, downtown specifically. And after that point, we'll be working towards going to a public meeting in August of this year. Some other important things in this project area, the railroad is planning to reconstruct their bridge over Ship Creek. I think that's the bridge that's 114, milepost 114. That project will not begin, and my understanding is it won't be funded until the next fiscal year, so it won't begin until actually after September. So we'll be coordinating with the railroad to make sure that these projects are compatible. And right now, the concept in general for this project is to try to make a safe connection between the two trails where we can separate the pedestrians from the railroad to the degree possible and provide some safe crossings for pedestrians. That's it. I'm trying to be brief, so if there's any questions, I can address those.
Any questions from the community?
Yes.
Comment, thoughts?
We've been working with them to try to find a way to make this work. The biggest, we got two problems. We got a lot of stuff going on down there. That junction there is honestly one of the biggest choke points on the railroad. We're looking at a couple different options to sort of ream it out, for lack of a better term. Then the other issue is, getting people underneath of us, particularly around Ship Creek. We've done a lot to try to keep the pedestrians off the tracks and so forth like that. And there's sort of a duck under the bridge now. And the direction to the designers right now is to try to make sure there's space so the trail can be accommodated in the future. And we're working with Kenny to try to coordinate that. It's in design in NEPA with us right now, but we're waiting on a STIP so we can actually spend money on it versus spend money on the weekends on it. So, and then, other than that, it's just, like I said, we do a lot of transloading on there. There's a lot of activity where you've got stuff going from train to truck and truck to train. And so it's a relatively circuitous route, but it's the one that's going to hopefully keep vehicles and pedestrians separated.
Perfect. So that puts us at 4:27. We've got 3 minutes. Do we want to extend it all, or are we good moving through? Calling that good for the day?
We can move the model, we can just bring the model one in June as well.
Okay, sounds good. Then, and it's just a project update, so we don't need to make a motion on that. That can just be back.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any general information to share? Any committee comments? Be brief if you have them. Any public comments? Not already provided. Okay, I think we're gonna make it in time then. So, 4:28, adjourned.